Okay, is the mic on now? Okay. Well, everybody, hopefully this is going to work out. I've got someone monitoring the stream right now. Hopefully you're getting sound as well as a picture of me talking to you. I am David Gregg. I'm the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Natural History Survey. And tonight's live stream is a substitute for the usual BioBlitz orientation that we would hold a month before the BioBlitz. Usually it would be held at Roger Williams Park Zoo in their education center. The zoo has been a partner of the survey for many years. The BioBlitz orientation is always held at the zoo, but given the present circumstances, we're streaming it instead. But that's a positive because this will be recorded and people can watch it at their leisure. So there may be a few technical glitches here and there, and just bear with me as we work through those. Right now I'm going to start the PowerPoint, and we can work our way through that. Okay, so if everything is working as intended, you are seeing the title slide for the Rhode Island BioBlitz 2021 Mercy Woods Preserve BioBlitz, to be held October 1 and 2. So, maybe you, let me see if I can get your screen to show, capture the, hang on, should be capturing the cursor. It's not capturing the cursor. Okay, well, anyway, I'll describe what I am, what I'm pointing to with my cursor. Okay. So first of all, I'd like to thank the sponsors. This army marches on its stomach, or this BioBlitz proceeds according to the generosity of our sponsors. So the local host is the Cumberland Land Trust. We're enormously grateful for their interest in this project and all the hard work that they've put in so far. They're going to make it possible for us to have a terrific BioBlitz there. The town of Cumberland. The town of Cumberland recently purchased the site of the BioBlitz, Mercy Woods, and so they are, and then they've delegated management of it to the Cumberland Land Trust. So the town of Cumberland is also our local host. Roger Williams Park Zoo, as I said, has been a BioBlitz sponsor for many years. They're enormously generous, and I'd like to thank them. Largesse Forestry has been a BioBlitz sponsor for even longer than the zoo has. So many of you know Matt Largesse as somebody who's really devoted to forests and forest conservation, and he's recognized in BioBlitz something that's helping with that and with conservation generally, something that he really supports. So thank you to Largesse Forestry. Thank you to the University of Rhode Island, College of the Environment and Life Sciences, the home of the Natural History Survey, and we've had a couple of individual sponsors as well. So where do we start? We're going to talk a little bit about BioBlitzes generally. What are they? How do we do them? And what results can we expect from BioBlitzes? And then we'll talk a little bit about this particular BioBlitz and this particular site. Just for your, to orient you, the blue pointer that's all the way at the top of the screen is in the very top northeastern corner of Rhode Island is the location of the 2021 Rhode Island BioBlitz. And the other blue markers are all the other places we've had Rhode Island BioBlitzes for the last 21 years. This will be the 22nd year. So what is a BioBlitz? A BioBlitz is an effort by volunteer naturalists to count as many species of life as possible on a particular parcel of land in just 24 hours. BioBlitz was originally created by Sam Droege, a USGS entomologist, and E.O. Wilson from Harvard. They each came up with a slightly different program, and when you kind of combine the ideas that the two of them had, this is where we get the BioBlitz from. They started it in 1997, and the Rhode Island Natural History Survey started our BioBlitz in 2000, just 3 years later. BioBlitzes have been held all around the world now. It's a regular thing. As I said, BioBlitz has been all around Rhode Island. The coverage in the northern part of the state isn't quite as dense as it is along the coast. Coastal sites offer the opportunity to look for marine species, so it's a little easier to get large numbers of participants because all the marine scientists get to participate too. But now we're in the very far northern part of the state and adding to our knowledge of that region as well. So the goals of BioBlitz fall in roughly 4 broad categories based on the who the particular target audience is. So there's the general public. There are naturalists and managers. So those managers would be DEM, the Nature Conservancy, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, people who are responsible for managing wildlife. Land conservators, so those would be local land trusts, in some cases the Nature Conservancy and other organizations, and of course school children or learners generally, could be college students as well. So just to highlight, so for the general public, BioBlitz is an opportunity to show them that biodiversity doesn't just occur in rainforests. It occurs right under your own feet. There can be hundreds of species in even a vacant lot somewhere in Rhode Island. So that's a really important message. For naturalists, this is a chance to turn casual interest into real engagement. So a lot of times participants in BioBlitz have an interest in birds, or they always wanted to know the plants, or they collected butterflies when they were a kid and haven't done anything since. Well, in a BioBlitz, there are hundreds of people out in a field and in the woods, all interested in what you're interested in, and they're at all different levels of accomplishment in their hobby or in their pursuit. And it allows you to maybe come back to that interest that you had as a kid, or an interest that you've always meant to pursue, and gives you inspiration, gives you means to develop that interest. For land conservators, sort of imagine you're a volunteer for a 12-person land trust out in Gloucester or in Hopkinton, in a small town. You've been working away for years, and sometimes it doesn't seem like people in town even really understand what you do, or maybe don't appreciate the value of land conservation. And then suddenly 200 people come in from all over New England and show a great interest in this piece of land that you've conserved in your town. And so it really helps them to get some positive feedback for all the hard work they've been doing, to make the case with their constituents that their work is valuable and it's something that needs support. So that's another important product of BioBlitz. And then for school children, I remember the case, I remember the circumstance at the Jamestown BioBlitz where it was pitch dark and a bunch of school kids from Central Falls hiked off down a trail and saw a moth light in the distance and went towards it. Of course, what they didn't realize in the dark was that there was a swamp between the trail and the moth light. So they waded up to their waists in mud and water, and they got tangled in prickers, and you'd have thought that it would be a horrible experience and that it would turn them off from nature forever. But it didn't. By the end of that BioBlitz, they were laughing and telling stories and talking about, oh, we found that frog, or did you see that moth, or what have you. So what you realize is it's the adventure. It's the minimally predictable encounter with nature that makes it exciting, that really engages the kids. And so BioBlitz is that. It's this minimally predictable contact with nature. Even nature trails now have, sort of safety handrails and padded wood chips on the ground, and that's good, and it has its place. But if you really want to engage people with the environment, then sometimes it's best to have an adventure. So what do you get out of a BioBlitz? Well, it's in 21 annual events so far. We have had 3,318 people participate. We've had people identify 20,493 species. Now, obviously that's a blue jay every time, so there's duplicates there, but that means there's almost 20,500 instances where a person or people identified a species, named a thing they were seeing. And you can see that over the years, if you look at the trend line of participants, which is the maroon down at the bottom, you'll see that our participation has been going up and up, and the total number of species that we've been finding has been going up and up as well. And I always like at this point to say, one of the things this shows is that participation counts. You don't need to be an expert in an obscure taxon to contribute to BioBlitz. Everybody has something to offer, whether they're carrying a bucket or just looking intently at a tree stump, and they see something that the expert on whatever it is didn't see, and they call it to their attention. So everybody has something to offer, and participation really does matter. And Vascular Plants. So BioBlitz is organized by teams, and the teams are usually organized around a taxon, a biological taxon. And so Vascular Plants is one of the teams that we've had. And you can see, this is the number of vascular plants found each year at BioBlitzes, and you can see that the number is held more or less steady. And what I think this shows is that our vascular plant team is actually pretty good. It's about as good as it can get. We are finding all the vascular plants every year. And that's not something we can say about every team. Obviously, the spider team has had one or two people at most. There are other, not even very obscure taxa like wasps, where we've hardly ever had anybody with any real expertise. And so those counts of those taxa go up and down radically depending on whether or not we have an expert that year. This is kind of fun, species per acre. It kind of shows that we have been perfecting our game over the years as we try harder to make sure we're recording at least some organisms from all the taxa that are easy to find. Earthworms. We can find earthworms pretty much every BioBlitz, but whether or not somebody sits down with earthworms and a guide to earthworms or whatever you use to identify earthworms, and looks at them and counts them and puts some names to them, you don't get to count them. But as we've worked hard to get people to pay attention to sow bugs, to isopods, to earthworms, to orthoptera like crickets, katydids, and grasshoppers, so that we are getting better coverage, not just big numbers for the 10 common taxa and then nothing, but really getting a broader review of the species at each site. And then we've had some really memorable discoveries. Who can forget the grass shrimp with a leech from the 2015 BioBlitz in Little Compton? Or Rocky the box turtle that we found at Rocky Point. You know, that place was so worked over for decades during its life as an amusement park. It's hard to imagine a box turtle having survived since it was a farm field, 150 years ago or what have you. This could well have been released by somebody who picked it up in the wild somewhere else. But it's a species that we're really worried about in Rhode Island generally, and to have one at a place like Rocky Point was totally cool and really taught us something about the value of these semi-urban refugia where nature has been able to have some sway. The nine-spotted ladybug, the disappearing ladybug that we found at Rocky Point. The first find of mosquito fish in Rhode Island, that was also from the Little Compton BioBlitz. The ants that were eating the broccoli shoots at the Snake Den BioBlitz, really interesting phenomenon there. And of course, we've had some great media coverage. We had Only a Game, which was WBUR's sports show back in the day, came and covered BioBlitz as full contact biology. We've had a bunch of videos made. Kurt Milton, who's a member of the survey, has made some really neat videos for us. And of course, the Coastal Institute at URI made a video on BioBlitz, the 2013 torrential rain tropical storm BioBlitz in Narragansett, Conotchet Farm, and that aired on Rhode Island PBS, which was pretty cool. Of course, we've also had papers published in peer-reviewed literature. This one is on the ants from that Narragansett BioBlitz. And BioBlitz data is used by Rhode Island DEM to revise and implement the Rhode Island Wildlife Action Plan. You can see that we're in the table of monitoring programs and actions in that plan. And of course, one of the big products of BioBlitz is kids outdoors. So, let's get a little theoretical here. One of the things, besides these sort of concrete products of BioBlitz, one of the things that I think is really important about BioBlitz is the way it models the scientific process. And Lord knows we need people to have better understanding of scientific process now more than ever. So a lot of times people who don't understand what science is or how it works don't have the discernment to tell the difference between something that Neil deGrasse Tyson tells them based on science, and something that a Fox News commentator tells them based on science. I used science, and the answer is, well, the credibility you give to either one of these commentators is based on your understanding of the scientific process. And that's where BioBlitz comes in. It helps everybody who participates, everybody who sees BioBlitz happening through the media or it's in their neighborhood and they happen to catch wind of it, observes learns more details that exist kind of behind the fog of just plain science. There's all the stuff that comes before the experts saying they used science. Field work, equipment development, related projects, pilot studies, libraries, and literature, literature research, and all of the falling in the mud and getting hypothermia and going out with equipment and having it fail and having to do it all over again. people don't see that, and they think that scientists just make stuff up, and that's one of the reasons that we're in the muddle that we're in. So how do we play the BioBlitz game? Well, there are a few basic parameters. First of all, we're counting species, and we can have arguments about the species concept and whether we're counting subspecies or varieties or what have you. We're basically counting species. We're counting individually identifiable, nameable species. Now, you have to stay in bounds because this is all the species we can find on a given parcel of land, so that parcel of land has to be rigidly defined. It's a team sport, so BioBlitz would be chaos if we didn't have some kind of organization, and we have it organized into teams. The teams are essentially taxonomically organized, and it's supposed to be fun. This is not supposed to be a drag. You're not supposed to wish you were somewhere else, at least not seriously. And so that's absolutely critical. So, first of all, the taxonomic teams fan out once we blow the horn and start the BioBlitz, which will be at 2 p.m. on Friday, October 1st. So we'll blow the horn, and the taxonomic teams will fan out throughout the parcel, and they'll start to make observations. The bird watchers, the birders will bird, and the butterfly people will butterfly, and the plant team will find plants, and everybody will make notes and write them down, take samples, and they bring them back to Science Central. Science Central is a big tent in a field located on the parcel of land where we're bioblitzing, and that's where we lay out the samples, the things that we don't know what it is. We had to bring it back to look it up in books and keys and show it to other people, see if they know what it is. And so that's the sorting, IDing, and of course counting, making the lists so that we know exactly how many we've got. They record the finds. Now the pink sheet here on the paper, the pink sheet here on the screen is that's the observation reporting form. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And we announce at the end of the 24 hours, we'll blow the horn again at 2 p.m. on Saturday, October 2nd. We'll blow the horn again, and everybody has to stop looking around, give people an hour to make preliminary tallies, and we'll announce the results before we all leave the Mercy Woods property. Now, it's going to take quite a while. For us to come up with the final counts. People have to take stuff home, key it out, ask authority on bees to identify some obscure species, what have you, and then those people will mail the results, email the results in to us later, and then we'll compile the final results sometime in the fall or around the holidays, and we'll release those then. So here's kind of, because we're doing this taxonomically, what we're actually doing is we're kind of exploring the tree of life. The BioBlitz reporting taxonomy, as I say, it's not really phylogeny, but it's a lot like phylogeny. Phylogeny is the organization of the evolution of the present day species from a tree of common ancestors, and so you can see that we have. We're actually going to sort of recapitulate all the different kinds of life on Earth, from viruses, archaea, and bacteria to mosses and hornworts and lycophytes and gymnosperms. That these are it kind of shows you some of the cool ways that life is divided up. I mean, there's asymmetric life like parazoa. There's radially symmetric things like starfish. And bilaterally symmetric things like arthropods and Lepidoptera, and then of course vertebrates. So this is kind of recapitulates the tree of life, and then here's the count taking place over here. Each of these lines is a taxonomic team, and they're some of them have to be kind of grouped together, like vascular plants and non-mollusk lophotrope worms, I kind of punted on that because there's no way we're going to have a team for bryozoa and a team for annelida and stuff like that. So we've kind of lumped some of those together. Some of these just really make sense in a public understanding rather than in a phylogenetic way. So they did. That's kind of how we lump them together. Okay, like spiders and kin, for instance, we put the Myriapoda and the millipedes and centipedes in with the spiders and kin just because, well, they seem to go well there. People who are finding spiders find those things too. Okay. So we have the taxonomic and other teams, and one of the ideas of teams is I don't want everybody to think it's just about making a list of species, although it is that. It'd be really neat if the team leaders reported back on interesting things they found or surprises or things that they had expected to find but for some reason didn't. Because at the end of the day, we're going to write a report that we hope will be useful to the Cumberland Land Trust and the town of Cumberland for the management of this property. And any kind of insight that all of you experts can help to put into that report is really valuable. So if you're on the taxonomic teams, yes, you're gonna it's a place where everybody who finds a moth can bring it to one place so that we only get one count. We don't double, triple, quadruple count things. A little bit more on that later. The teams also allow experts to mingle with sort of beginners and for people to learn from folks that are at a different stage in the development of their interest. The teams are also really good for helping make the coverage as universal as possible, so that people are not just looking all in the same place, but the team leaders can help sort of dispatch people to different parts of the property, different habitat types. So. Okay. When I finally get the data organized, there's a sort of massive spreadsheet that I use for organizing everybody's finds, and this is just an example. This is the crustacean data page from a BioBlitz where we found 27 species of crustacea and kin. For instance, David Borkman found a copepod that we identified as Acardia tonsa. There's a Thecostraca lepus species, gooseneck barnacle, that was found by Nils Hobbs. So anyway, this is how we record everything, and it all tallies up to these top corners, and then that all goes to a separate summary. Now, the cool thing about teams is once you started doing taxonomic teams, you can do teams by all kinds of other things. So one of the teams is the litter bugs, and they're not organized taxonomically, they're organized based on a habitat, which is all the things that live in leaf litter. We also have an art team, and we have had in the past a creative writing team and an education team. There are lots of different ways for us to learn about the life around us besides just taxonomy. And I think the art team has shown that over the years. The creative writing team definitely has shown that. Some of the production of the art team, it's just really special. The art team and the education team. And, one of the things about teams is it's a game, so we can have a little fun. So the team, I can see which team gets the most number of, let's say, herps. Can the herp team break the BioBlitz record for herps? or can the bird team break the record for bird species? You can also do something. So obviously there are a lot fewer herps than there are birds. So if you figure out what the maximum number of a species is for, let's say, herps in Rhode Island and for birds in Rhode Island, you can then see how close the team came to the theoretical maximum as a percent. So did they get 30% of the species likely to have been found in Rhode Island, or 70% or 80%? And the team that pretty much every year gets the highest percentage of possible species is the herp team. One of the other cool things about BioBlitz, now that we've had 21 going on 22 of them, is you can actually, in addition to just finding rare species, you can actually find which are the most common species. What are the most likely to be seen birds in Rhode Island? Well, when I made this chart, we'd had 16 BioBlitzes. The first 10 or 12 on this list that are in red have been seen at every single BioBlitz. Mourning dove, great crested flycatcher, eastern kingbird, blue jay, American crow, black-capped chickadee. So, obviously this says something about the visibility of each species in addition to its prevalence, or its how widespread it is in all the habitats that BioBlitz has been held in. But it's also interesting because it answers the question, if I went out on any given day, what species would I be most likely to see? Okay, so again, how do we play the BioBlitz game? Remember that we have teams, that the teams fan out and try to cover the area as much as possible. They bring things back to Science Central where they can be identified and listed. And so this is what I call the RIBORF, the Rhode Island BioBlitz Observation Reporting Form. And when it comes time to do the final report, it's really hard if people submit things on napkins and matchbooks. Well, people use matchbooks anymore, but matchbooks. It's really important that the teams put everything on these pink sheets, and that we get one sheet or one set of sheets from each team. If you are a plant person and you happen to find a beetle, it would obviously, if the beetle team is gone or there isn't a team for whatever it is you found, put it down. It's better than losing it. But it would be better if you took the beetle to the beetle team so that they could identify it and put it on their list. Because the thing is that if they put ladybug on their list, well, they put the 7-spotted ladybug on their list, and you put just plain ladybug on your list, we have to throw yours out, even though it might have been different than the one they found. So it's best if you get the things you find to the right teams, and each team submits a single sequence of observation reporting forms. So you put your name here, you put your team here, you do the hokey pokey and you turn it all around. No, you list the species here, and then this is actually really helpful. So this right-hand column, I really need help sometimes knowing what it is. If you've put down a Latin binomial with no other identifying information, I haven't any idea whether it's a barnacle or a fungus or a rotifer or a bird. So you can make a note about whatever it is here. You can also make interesting notes like, hey, this is really rare. I haven't seen one of these in 20 years, or this is invasive, or I know a guy who's researching these. He'd love to know about this. Any kind of information that you want to put in here, that would be fantastic. Okay, so people always ask questions about identification and boundaries. Now, you have to stay in bounds. For safety and neighbor reasons, participants must physically stay in bounds. So please respect abutters. Keep your personal person in bounds of BioBlitz. Now, the species have to be in bounds too. It's like trees, for instance. However, We also have the seaward boundary rule. Now, in this case, we aren't at a coastline, so this rule won't really apply. But if you see, let's say, a bird flying overhead, it's unreasonable to expect you to accurately determine if it is technically over the BioBlitz site or not. So if you can see it and you can identify it to species while you're inbounds, you can count it if it's something that's a passing by sort of thing. The example that I give for coastal sites is whales. If you see a whale spouting out to sea, we're going to count whale. You can't count trees you can see from trees outside the boundaries that you can see from inside the boundaries, I guess, obviously. And there's the rule of least duplications. This is kind of what I was talking about before with ladybugs. So if you see an insect, and that's all you can identify it to is insect, you could put it down. The problem is that if somebody else sees a bee and writes down bee, I'm going to throw out your just plain insect, because it might have been a bee, we don't know, so that it has to go. Now, if somebody writes down bee, but somebody else writes down Bombus SP, we have to throw out the bee because we don't know that it wasn't Bombus SP. And if somebody writes Bombus affinis, we have to throw out the Bombus SP because we don't know that it wasn't affinis. So this is one of the reasons it's important to get the things you find to the right team. Like I said with the example of the ladybug, if you have indeed found something new and novel, but that you can't identify, you don't want it thrown out, because that's what's likely to happen if you don't get it to the right team. And then this is what I mentioned about before on the riborf, the rule of help us out. Is this thing an annelid worm or a foraminifera? Give me a clue. It'd be really helpful for writing up the results. Okay. So just a little bit about the site. Here is our locator map. This is the Massachusetts border, and you see Massachusetts, there be dragons. Here is the Mercy Woods site, and the very northern edge and almost all the way to the east. Here is the boundaries. This is the inbounds, roughly inbounds, and you can see where Science Central is. So north is up. This is the Rhode Island, Massachusetts line right here at the top. And you can see we are literally bioblitzing the state boundary, which is really cool. I think we bioblitzed the state boundary at Goosewing Beach when we did the Little Compton bioblitz. Somebody help me if we did another one. I'm not sure we did. Okay, and then this land here, which wraps all the way around the east and southern sides of the site, is conservation land. It's actually watershed land for the Pawtucket water supply system. So that is absolutely out of bounds. We are not allowed on the water supply land. And that edge has stone wall and various ways to determine it. There's some land that's out of bounds that's inside the boundary, and that's because there are other people at Mercy Woods who are doing things, and they don't want us mucking about. There's the Sisters of Mercy office. There's a small parcel here. It's a building in a lawn. It's pretty easy to figure out that you probably shouldn't be picking spiders off the walls. There's a health center, which is kind of a big complex right in the middle. It's got a parking lot and stuff like that. So we can't be hanging around there. And Pawtucket Water has a house that's on kind of at the north end, north of Sumner Brown Road, and they've asked that we not bioblitz the house and its immediate environs. This north end of the property is really cool from a habitat point of view, so we don't want to miss it, just not around the house. So the entry to the site is here. It's Route 121, Rentham Road, and the traffic can be heavy on Rentham Road, and it can be fast moving, so we want everybody to be careful coming and going from that turn. On the day, we will have signs posted up and down the road telling you where BioBlitz is. And for parking, there's several different places around Science Central where we will have it marked for parking. It's really important that people not park on the asphalt roadways because they need to have access for emergency vehicles to the health center. So anyway, find your designated parking areas around Science Central. Okay, so ecologically, Mercy Woods is actually right at the boundary between a couple of ecoregions, so that could bode well. This is the hillshade, and it's kind of cool. It shows you that the site is kind of at the end of, sort of draped over a ridge that comes down from the north like this, and then it falls away quite steeply on the east and south sides, and the ridge at the very top is dry, and there's a dry meadow and some really cool shrubland in there, and there's a lot of lawn on the sloping away to the west. So there's quite a diversity here. The one thing we don't have is a lot of open water. There are a few seeps, and this year, miraculously, things like vernal pools are still wet. So then there's at least one of those. So there are aquatic things here, but just not like our usual sites where we have big open water. So this is the soils map. I don't know much about soils. They're mostly something called Canton and Charlton, and then there's fine sandy loams on the north and west, and that rocky steep bit there is Canton and Charlton Rock Outcrop Complex. A few things about safety. We have to have a safe BioBlitz or we can't have BioBlitz. We're relying on all of you, every participant, to be safe, to tell us if they see something that's unsafe, or to kind of mention it to somebody who they see doing something that might be unsafe. That person might not be aware that they're in danger, so you should definitely speak up, or tell one of us, tell one of the survey people or one of the Cumberland Land Trust people. So we want everybody to be safe. If you cannot act safely and follow the rules, you will be asked to leave BioBlitz. There's a few things related to that. So firearms, we don't want any firearms, alcohol, fires, loud music, or drones. So no drones. They freak out the wildlife. You might get like really cool aerial pictures of Science Central or something like that, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for wildlife, and so we want to see them on their terms as much as possible, not on ours. We don't have a lot of open water, but stone walls we have rock outcrops and retaining walls. Stone walls can be really dangerous. They can roll and fall as you climb over them. We really want people to be careful around stone walls. If you've ever paid someone to fix a stone wall, they can also be expensive to fix the wall itself, never mind your broken leg. So watch out for that. I've already mentioned the traffic. The traffic within the parcel is pretty light, mostly going to and from the health center, but the turn off of Rentham Road can be a little tricky. So there's some things about ticks. There are ticks. Ticks carry disease. We mostly use permethrin, which is really effective when you spray it on your field clothes in advance, let it dry, and then wear them. Here's somebody showing how to do it. You don't apply that while you're wearing it. Poison ivy. If you are not familiar with poison ivy, ask somebody on the botany team what it looks like. All right, and mosquitoes, of course. Mosquitoes, especially late in the season, can carry dangerous diseases. So we want you to use insect repellent or wear heavy clothes. and especially when you're out in the evening and at night. And of course, coronavirus is with us. BioBlitz is an outdoor event. We're going to spread out Science Central as much as possible. The Natural History Survey is an organization that supports science and encourages the use of science in socially important things like conservation. So we expect BioBlitz participants who are eligible for vaccinations will be fully vaccinated. Other hazards. Well, I mentioned Rentham Road. There are dog walkers, so you may run across dog droppings. It's nothing like Rocky Point, which was a spectacular amount of dog droppings, but nonetheless, if you see wild animals doing crazy stuff, stay well away from them. Rabies and other animal diseases, are possibilities. And yeah, there could be all kinds of dangerous wildlife, although probably not great whites. Respect abutters' properties. Again, BioBlitz is a pretty low impact thing, and we like to think that people are excited when we come to inventory land in their town, and we want them not to be nervous about this. This is not a rock festival or some sort of alternative weekend long festival. We want people to be really excited that we're there, and so everybody should respect the abutters' privacy and use your map to find out where the boundaries are. We have a scientific collector's permit for the BioBlitz activity, but you are responsible for any other permits that are required based on your activity. So if you're mist netting birds or bats, or again, I don't know if we have any finfish actually at the site. It'd be really cool actually if somebody could find one. So I don't know about a fishing license, but and we probably won't be doing any scuba diving either. But you are responsible for your own permits if you're doing anything else besides scientific collector's permit. What's covered under our scientific collector's permit? Okay, so when you were dealing with animals, first of all, only touch, move, or sample organisms if you need to do it for identification. If you know that you're looking at a pickerel frog, unless you have a concrete plan to do a demonstration with the pickerel frog for kids at Science Central, please leave the pickerel frog right where you found it. You don't need to bring it back for identification. At all times, treat animals humanely. If you do take an organism away from its spot, for instance, to Science Central, you have to put it back exactly where you found it. That's really critical for box turtles and a bunch of other stuff. So don't take animals unless you absolutely need to for identification or for demonstration that we've organized. And if you do move an organism, please put it back exactly where you found it. A lot of people, especially studying insects, lichens, fungi, some other stuff like that, have to bring stuff home in order to identify it. And that is totally fine. We expect that will happen, and the landowners are okay with that. But we are asking you to tell us what it is you've taken, what samples you've taken, and where they're going to end up. So if you take insects home to identify, most insect collectors know that their collection is going to go to this or that repository. So just let us know where they'll end up eventually. That'd be great. Everybody who attends, well, there are no walk-ins. Everybody has to be pre-registered in advance. You have to be assigned to a team, even if it's just the hospitality team or the education team, or you've been assigned as a bucket carrier for some team. You have to be on a team, and everybody has to receive safety instructions and sign a liability waiver and sign a photo release. These are requirements for participation. So the bottom line, you have to pre-register, you have to be assigned to a team, you have to agree to follow the rules, you have to sign the waiver and the photo release, and if you're a minor, under 16, you have to be accompanied by a parent or guardian. And that's it. So here's our bird team fanning out at a BioBlitz, ready for the adventure of their minimally predictable encounter with nature. I hope that provides you a glimpse of what BioBlitz is like. It gives you a rough orientation of the parcel where this year's BioBlitz is going to be. Mercy Woods is open to the public. You can go up there in advance, just like a regular member of the public, and walk around. There's a great trail system. There's a map that's posted right by the parking area, and you can take a look around. You can email questions to me, dgreg at rinhs.org, or Kyra, kstillwell at rinhs.org, and we will answer them if you've got questions. And unfortunately, without being in person, it's really hard to have you ask questions and have them answered. I suppose if we were a little more proficient with the live streaming, we would have a chat and somebody would be watching the chat and asking questions, but maybe next time. So I look forward to seeing everybody out there. The registration is open. If you go to rinhs.org, there are links there to more information as well as to the registration form, which is a Google form. And yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody at BioBlitz.